This is the Voice of the Land podcast with your hosts, Kevin Arnold and Nick Paulus.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Voice of the Land podcast. We are partnered with Web Streaming Studios by LPV, NEO Sports Network, and of course, we welcome all listeners on Cuyahoga Valley Radio.com here on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Remember, anything you hear, anything you like what you're hearing, don't like what you're hearing, reach out to us at VTL_POD, at VTL_pod on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook, we are at Voice of the Land. And, of course, you can find all of our podcasts on Google, Spotify, and Apple, along with video content at YouTube at Voice of the Land Podcast on there as well. Alongside me, we have my brother, Nick Paulus, and our producer extraordinaire, Peter Tellup. I am your host, Kevin Arnold. And we have a very special guest joining the podcast this week. We are very excited to welcome our friend, our mentor from ESPN Cleveland, host of The Next Level from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday, and of course on ESPN Radio now, host of Game Day Saturday afternoons, Emmett Golden. Emmett, how's it going, man?
It's going great. You got all that in.
I know.
Look at you. Sound like a professional.
Trying to. That's what I'm trying to do,
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys giving me a chance to be a part of this. I love the setup. Everything looks amazing. So, appreciate it.
It's been a transition over the last few weeks. I know we were kind of talking before we came on air, but yeah, the last 3 weeks trying to get all that in and everything, but that's what we're here to do, and that's what it comes with the gig. So
right.
You know?
No, it looks great. It looks a lot better than my setup. So.
Oh, come on, it's a pretty good setup over there, right?
Yeah.
Work in progress, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We may be making some updates to the studio soon. I'll just say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not giving away too much, but
no, I can't give away too much.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we do here at the Voice of the Land too. We don't give any spoilers. That's why we had to tease the special guest this week for a couple days in a row before we could finally announce that. So we are here to talk Cleveland sports, and we're going to get into all those conversations. But we kind of wanted to just start with kind of giving the people. I know you probably told this story many times on air, but for the people listening and just tuning in to the Voice of the Land who haven't maybe tuned in to ESPN Cleveland as they should, what's your story like? How did you get to this point being in this sports broadcasting industry?
So it's funny, I was part of an event at Euclid High School. It's called Success Looks Like Us yesterday. That's why I wasn't on the next level. So I told this story like 50 times yesterday, but I'm more than happy to tell it again. I went to the University of Cincinnati for a couple years, ran out of cash, right? Just couldn't afford school anymore. Came home, started working at American Greetings in their world headquarters in the shipping and receiving department, and I was like, okay, cool, like. Now I have a job I could work at the rest of my life because there were a lot of people that were kind of older in age and they had worked there for 30 years or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I felt lucky that I, just kind of fell into a stable job, a good job. It paid well. Like I was like, okay, this is great. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, for people who don't know, we started dating when we were like 14, when we were freshmen in high school. So she graduates from Ohio State in like 3 years. She moves home. Gets pregnant. I was like, well, hold on. It's cool though, right? Because I got a good job, so it's all right. Like we'll get married, everything will be straight. I go into work one day and they lay off 300 people.
Oh God.
Wow.
Yeah, just 300 people just gone, and I was one of them. And I just was like, man, what am I going to do now? So I did everything that I could. I loaded UPS trucks, third shift. I worked in some factories, did temp agency stuff, sold treadmills at Dick's Sporting Goods for a while. Then I got a call back from American Greetings, and they were like, hey, we got like a part-time job available for you. It was just way more stable than anything else I was doing. So I went back there, and I was just grateful for that. Like, all right, I got something stable again. Like, cool. But my wife is like, hey, don't you want to have a career? And I told her, I was like, I was just happy to have a job. I was very short-sighted, right? I just was happy to get a consistent check again. And I said, all right, well, she had a point. And I thought to myself, well, all right, if I'm going to pursue a career, it's going to have to be something I love. All right, what are you really into? I said, all right, I'm into sports. Coaching has probably sailed that ship, so
right.
It's like, all right, I don't all right, I know I love sports. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, so let me put that to the side. Now let me kind of evaluate what I think I'm good at. And I said, all right, I think I'm funny, but I think I'm funny. That doesn't mean that everyone else.
Translate to being a comedian.
Exactly, right. I don't
Yeah.
know if everybody else thinks I'm funny. So I said, okay, that's useless. That's a useless skill. So then I moved to the next thing. Like, what else am I good at? I'm like, I'm really good at making friends. And I'm like, that's another useless ability I have, right? I'm like what? There's no careers where if you're funny and you make friends that you could pursue. And while I'm like self-evaluating, I was listening to the Dan Patrick Show. And one of his producers, Seton O'Connor, which I listened to the show every day while I was at American Greetings, would jump in and crack a joke once in a while. And I also knew he kind of played the bumper music, and I said, hold on, like, I think I could do that. I think at the very least, I could probably run the board,
Right,
and, I could jump in and crack a joke,
Sure,
and I could
yeah.
create a sound for a show. I was like, okay, I think I can do that. I also listened to 850 all the time, and I heard the Ohio Media School commercials and stuff. So I said, all right, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. So I enrolled at OMS, which was OCB at the time, right? The Ohio Center for Broadcasting. So I did that. And, just start grinding, man. Just, really trying to get the most out of that. Applied to internships at a few different places. There was only one place I wanted to intern, and that was obviously at ESPN Cleveland. And fortunately enough, got an internship there. So I'm working, I'm going to school, I'm interning, and now I have 2 kids.
Right.
And my wife, and we had gotten married since, in that whole like grind period. And you guys kind of know from that point, it just was making the most out of every opportunity that I got. It was, hey, we're going to let you cover Cleveland State basketball. And I just put everything into it that I had, never understanding, like, because I'm building all these relationships naturally and organically. And then later on, it clicks. The skill of making friends easy is building relationships.
Right.
Like, I'm good at building relationships. I had no
Step
idea.
one.
Right.
Check.
And it's like, okay, this is something that, is valuable in the media. And, I got a chance to produce 3 Deep and run the board and do that stuff, and even X's and O's with the pros before that, and kind of create a sound for those shows, and was loving it. And to me, that was like my apex. I was like, this is what I came to do.
Sure. Right.
Now, I wasn't making any money at all, right? I was making no money
They
at
don't
all.
tell you that, at orientation.
No.
Yeah,
And my wife is like, yo, something's got to give at some point. I know you're having fun, but, like, you're not making any money. The financial burden was really on her. And she was on me, which rightfully so. I totally understand, but I kept telling her, like, I got a feeling this is gonna work.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel it, because everything was going very fast.
Right.
For me, and it just felt fast. Like, just opportunity, and it didn't slow down. So I'm telling her, like, just trust me. Then I'd get hired full time. And I don't say it was the happiest day of my life. It was the happiest day of her life, because I remember giving her a call, and I was producing Hooli and Gerard at the time. And they brought me in the office and said, hey, you've been doing a great job. We want to offer you a full-time position. I said, sold. They said, do you want to know how much we're offering to pay you? I said, I know it's more than what I'm making right now.
I'm good.
So I'll take it. And they all got a big laugh out of that. And I called my wife, and I told her. She's like, are you serious? I said, yeah, look, baby, I got to run. Got to get back to work. And my phone started blowing up. My wife told everybody, right? Like, she went and told everybody. She was way more happy than I was, which is funny. You would think, like, I put in all this sweat equity, right, to get to where, to get hired full time. Right. And she was way more excited than I was. They picked me up from work at the time, because, like, one of the things I talk about when I tell this is, there was a time we had one car, right? Mm-hmm. And my wife, obviously, I wasn't going to have her on the bus or anything like that. So she would drive it to work and pick the kids up from school, and I would catch the bus to ESPN Cleveland. I did that for almost like 2 years. And she picked me up, and the kids jump out of the back seat with a cake, and they're, congratulations. Yeah. Great moment.
Tearing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Something I'll never forget. But it kept going, right? The grind kept going. So now I'm doing that, and then I get an opportunity. They say, hey, we're gonna move you from behind the board and out of the producer's room and pair you up with Hammer, and let you guys,
Golden Boys.
do a show. And like Aaron and I really didn't have a relationship at that point because I was always working at nights for the most part, and he was during the day, so we just didn't see each other. So that's when we really started to kind of grow and develop our relationship when we did the show together. We did that for 2 years, had a bunch of fun, and then one day they said, "Hey, you're ready to sit in the lead chair and kind of host and traffic cop the shows and stuff." And I didn't know if I was or not. Probably that's like during that time starting off, I probably had more anxiety than anything because I'm like, it's a lot, right? Like hosting the show is a lot. Like sitting in the second seat where you just kind of react to what's going on. Like to me, that's probably the, for lack of a better term, easiest thing to do. But
so he's saying Paul says the easy job on the podcast?
Ain't no doubt.
Right here.
Ain't no doubt about it. But when you're sitting in that chair, reset and all this other stuff, and I'm, and I was like, okay, if you guys think I'm ready, like, okay, I'm not gonna say no. And been doing that on the next level about a year ago. So we do the next level. We're about 2 years in. I get an email from my boss at the time, Emmett Golden, saying like, hey, this is Mike Uranaga. He works at ESPN Radio. He asked me to kind of, introduce you guys via email. And I was like, hey, Mike, nice to meet you. He was like, hey, Emmett, I will be sending you an email shortly. And I was like, okay, cool. I ended up going to sleep, right? And I woke up the next morning. I look at my email. I said, oh, okay, Mike emailed me back. And it's like, Emmett, we'd like to offer you a 30-show contract to be a fill-in host on ESPN Radio. I'm like, what?
Dream come true right there.
Yeah, I'm like, what? What was crazy, though, is, Nick, like, it wasn't even a dream. Like, a lot of times I feel guilty because my only goal, I didn't grow up thinking about being a host.
Yeah,
right.
That wasn't, I know a lot of people that come through as interns and stuff, and they go, I listened to the radio from the time I was 5 years old every night, and I want to be like this guy and that guy. That wasn't my dream. Like, I didn't want to do radio until I sat and had that conversation with myself when I was I was 29 years old.
Yeah.
So then the only goal I had was just to run the board, which in hindsight is a very small goal to have.
You just want to be a part of something,
right?
To bring you into that.
That was it. I never thought I had the ability to host a show. Like I was. I grew up on guys like Michael Regai and Greg Brenda and Munch, and I just hold those guys such a high respect for those guys. I'm like, I could never do that. I don't have the ability to do it. So I never pursued it. I had other people telling me, no, you should try it. And I just was like, okay, I'll, if you think I should, then I will, because you guys are the decision makers.
Right.
So I'll give it a shot. So it was a shock more than anything. And I was like, okay, well, this is great. I've handled everything. It's an opportunity. Let me try to make the most out of it. And a few months ago, I get a call. Now I know, Uranaga well, worked with him for a year now. And he calls me one day, and he's like, hey, you've been doing such a great job. And we identified you quickly that we kind of want you to be one of our main guys and part of ESPN Radio. So we want to offer you a Saturday show, from noon to 4 every Saturday. I was like, wow. Like, what? Like, yeah. Again, sold. You ain't got to tell me how much I'm getting paid or anything. I'll take it. Yep. I'll do it. And, he said, well, I'm going to pair you with there's a woman named Amber Wilson that works out of Miami. Amber's great. Amber is amazing.
Great follow, by the way.
Yeah,
on Twitter as well. So.
At Amber W790. Yeah. Okay. Just a lot of I have a lot of fun, doing the show with her. So that's kind of been my story. I've just always tried to make the most of each opportunity, not so much trying to force anything. Where I got to do this, I got to do that. I just got to make the most of the opportunities that I get, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's so important too. That's an important lesson too, is to take advantage of opportunities. No matter what you're trying to get into, take advantage of those opportunities, because we all have goals, but those goals can change based on what direction you go or what opportunities open up to you, and you don't really want to say no to opportunities unless it's really you're not able to accomplish what you're responsible for.
And through it and overall in life, you got to overcome adversity, right? Yeah. So, my adversity coming up, through this was like a bunch of financial adversity, right? Which is kind of part of it, goes hand in hand when you work in radio.
Yeah.
But I also, again, got a bunch of chances. A lot of times, like when you intern, you don't work at the place you intern. I know ESPN Cleveland, they hire a lot of interns, but they don't hire all the interns.
Sure.
And I remember I bring up a friend of mine, Danny Cunningham, all the time, right, where this is a guy did everything right, bust his butt and deserved like to be hired full time by us, and we didn't have a spot.
Sure.
And he left and went and did his own thing, and like moved to
Minnesota,
Wisconsin,
right?
then Wisconsin, then
Yep.
Minnesota,
Gotcha.
and built a brand. I know that's a bad word, in sports, but really did build his thing, his own thing. It's like, yeah, like if you really, really, really want to do this, you'll figure it out. You'll find a way. And if you don't, you usually find out quickly that this probably isn't for me. This is for some people it's too much work without enough instant gratification, especially financially. But after a while, once you finally do, kind of make it, and that's subjective, then it's worth it. And just even, I know for myself, just being around, the guys when I started off, to me, that was like good enough.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't good enough for my wife.
Right.
It was good enough for me. She was like, no, I need to see some cash, but just being in that atmosphere is great. And I love being a part of that now.
Yeah. Well, and I know that you call yourself a minor Cleveland celebrity, but we all know you got major notoriety in this town and now beyond ESPN radio. And but we are here to talk about sports, and somebody that is gaining some notoriety in this town in a polarizing type way is Collin Sexton of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I know that you guys on the Next Level have had a lot of conversations about him, and the city of Cleveland seems to be debating because he was brought in originally as the 8th pick, people looking at him as a point guard. But from what you can see, he's more of a scorer, and he over the last 5 games, he has scored over 25 points in 4 of those 5, and in 3 of those 4 games, it's been over 30, and he just scored his another career high, 41 a couple nights ago. What do you see out of Collin Sexton? What type of player do you see him being for the future of this team?
He's a scorer. He's a guy that you can count on to get you at least 20 every night, and that's a positive thing. I also look at him as he's coachable. There aren't enough fans and people in the Twitter sphere that understands that he has grown, right? When he got drafted, what was the knock? He can't shoot.
Yeah.
Hey, he can shoot.
Yeah.
Now, right? Like, he's not Steph
Shot
Curry.
40% last year, 38, 39% now from 3.
Which
so.
and not bad at all.
No,
right?
absolutely.
Was the guy, he can't shoot. Then it turned into, well, he doesn't pass. And he does put blinders on at times. But working with JB Biggerstaff, who he's worked with the entire time that JB has been there, like he's now starting to develop that, starting to look for his teammates, and you can see it. The guys don't always make the shots when he passed to him.
I was just going to say that.
Right.
A lot of times, we saw, Chetty, a couple other times out there, he's passing to the right person, wide open, just missing it. Delhi the other night, 0 for 8, 0 for 5 from 3.
So we were in the media room after the game, and somebody made the comment, man, the Cavs backcourt scored 41 points. It was because Delhi didn't score.
Right.
And Collin did. So, yeah, what's funny is, like, I like Collin. If I was to put my fan hat on, I'm probably more of like a Kevin Porter fan.
Sure,
You guys know I love Jetty, even though he's having a tough year this year. But when I see like somebody being unfairly criticized, it makes me want to have their back, and that's what it's been with Collin for me, because I don't understand it. I don't know how you can watch this guy develop, and as hard as he plays, and I know guys
he's the hardest worker out there.
Yeah,
he really is.
And I know guys shouldn't get pats on the back for playing hard all the time,
right?
But it's a novelty, especially in the NBA.
Yeah.
And he plays hard, whistle to whistle. He works hard after practice. Like
17 and 45 now, and he's out there doing it like it's 0-0 beginning of the year, every time,
all the time. That's just his nature. That's what he is. He works hard. He has to be told, like, bro, sit down somewhere, like calm down. And that's a positive. That's a good thing. I get frustrated when I see people not embracing that and trying to reject it and go, oh, move him to the bench and play Darius and this and that. And, I think Garland will be great. I think KP will be great. Even Dylan Windler, who we haven't had a chance to see. I think the Cavs have a bright future with their young guys, but I don't know why people just don't want to give Collin the credit he deserves.
I think people just get so trapped up in their mindset.
Mm-hmm.
They make one hot take and then they got to roll with it.
Yeah.
It's like the Colin Cowherd, thought process where it's like, hey, I already said Baker sucks. We're going to roll with Baker sucking. Right. And then you capitalize on those moments that they do.
But when he does it, you got to
41 points the other night, and they're like, he had
lost.
They lost.
Right.
He didn't make the right pass. And it's like, no, he's getting so much better. And you got to be able to look at that from, that mindset that he's a second-year player. He's 20 years old. What, 20, 21 years old?
21, yeah.
I mean, it's just impossible what he's doing, especially with 4 head coaches over the last 24 months.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
And like the other thing that frustrates me, you brought it up, where like people they make this proclamation at the start of someone's career and they don't want to back off of it.
Right.
People are wrong all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. All the time. Everybody in the media who gives an opinion is wrong at some point. So just own it and go, man, I blew that one.
Right.
I blew that one. Hey, as one of the things I don't hesitate to do. I thought Cody Kessler would be a decent quarterback. Wrong. Right. Wrong. Not even close. So, like, it's all right. But what's funny is people who don't really have, nobody's keeping score.
Yeah.
But people think they are. So if you're on Twitter and you got a following on Twitter and you're making, this guy's this and this guy's that, nobody's keeping score, and if they do, tell them to shut up.
Right.
Like, whatever, bro, you were wrong too. About whatever, and it's part of the media thing. They tell you, well, it's either left or right, it's either black or white. It's no middle,
gray.
Yeah, Munch used to say to me, "Don't straddle the fence, you'll hurt the boys," and which I respect Munch. And Reggie was another guy that told me, like, no, Emmett, you got to pick one or the other. You can't straddle the fence. And like I said, I respect those guys. I can't even, tell you how much I respect them. Can't quantify it, but I disagree. There's too much gray in the world. There's too much gray in the world. So sometimes I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say that. I know it goes against everything kind of sports talk radio was built upon. But I think
you got to have those hot takes. I mean, you have to.
I'll have a hot take once in a while.
Yeah.
If you listen to ESPN radio, I've been on this Tom Brady to Cleveland for like 2 weeks now. It's not picking up steam, but
not quite, not yet.
Yeah,
not yet.
Once in a while, I'll throw a hot take out there, but I also go like, bro, I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I have no idea.
Right, and that's what we started with this podcast too, was we knew that we weren't going to have like a hot take or be debating every single time. I mean, Paulus and I
think the hottest thing that we ever got into over was last year whenever the Indians were struggling. I think they were 14 games back from the Twins, and at that point in time, I said, if by the All-Star break they don't break it to like 7 or 8, with the Twins, you got to look at selling Frankie. Right. And he jumped on me for 20 straight minutes. It was like, no, you can't do it. Like going crazy with it.
Sounds like good content.
It was good content. It was good content. I actually went back and heard it again this past week. I was listening to it. I was like, that was pretty good.
I mean, even with me and Gerard, like, we're best friends.
Right.
We love each other, and we don't argue hardly at all. Every once in a while we do,
right?
And it makes for good radio.
Absolutely.
When two guys or girls, whatever, are on the opposite side of a topic, like, and they both know what they're talking about. They're both making points. It's definitely entertaining.
But you got to go with what you like. You don't want to go opposite just because you can go opposite.
Right.
You want to be able to tell the truth and just tell it like it is.
Right. Like, I can't do that. I can't take the other side just to take
to do it.
Right.
Because I can't argue something I don't really care about.
Right.
I'll be terrible at it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, you're a stupid face.
Yeah.
Hey, that's what I'd end up going to if I didn't really care about it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's early episodes where I tried that, and it didn't work.
It doesn't work. You can hear it.
Yeah, it doesn't work because then you don't have the facts based on it. You can't really argue the point because you're not.
You don't care. You don't really care.
No.
Like, stuff to argue about something that you don't really care about. Like, the greatest, think about stuff in history, right? Like, if they weren't really passionate about civil rights,
right.
it wouldn't have passed. You know, like, you got to really be passionate about something to argue it properly.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, and that's what we, like I said, that's what we do with this podcast is we're going to have genuine conversations. We may take a realistic approach, try to, like, take the fan goggles off, because there are so many podcasts out there, and we know that there's a lot of similarities. It's a lot of fans that set these up, but it's, we do have goals to try to get to, follow a similar path to what you did, and that's what part of this is for, but it's also to look at things in a more realistic manner, reading beat reporters' articles and looking at stories and why they're happening. I mean, you look at the Cavs, people want to just blame one person, and that's why they go after Collin Sexton.
Well, it was Beeline. He's gone.
Right.
Now it's the Sexton.
Yeah.
First it was Ty Lue. And then,
Oh, and I was willing to
I know you were. Yeah.
Oh, man.
You were
I used
all
to
on
go
that.
at everybody on the Ty Lue, all the Ty Lue haters out there.
Well, of course, Larry Drew. I mean, I don't know if Paulus has told you, if you've heard, kind of the reason for our name is because of Larry Drew.
The voice.
Yes,
that's
right.
right.
He was the voice.
Yeah.
I'm not the coach, I'm the voice.
But it seems like it kind of like ebbs and flows between the coach and being transitioned out to Collin. But this year we know that there was deep-rooted issues with the veterans and how they approach Beeline and how he was able to connect or lack thereof with those veteran players and the message. And those veterans, of course, they were part of the NBA culture with LeBron here, where they thought that, and they knew that they could just turn it on when they needed to, and they would get to the finals. They would have an opportunity at a championship because they had that guy on the team. Guess what? That guy's not here, and it's a different process to get back to NBA relevancy, and everybody just kind of wants to find that one person on the team instead of looking at the actual issues and how deep that they go when people are telling you these things are happening. This is why this team is where they're at 17-45 on the season.
Yeah, when Beeline came in, he was, I guess for lack of a better term, a strict coach, which I'm 40 years old. Every coach was strict, when I started playing sports and stuff. That's just kind of how it was. And evidently that's not it in the NBA anymore, right? They're like, no, we need to feel like you care and about what we want to run and the stuff. Well,
Beeline also didn't have, the proper NBA voice itself. I mean, he had never been in the NBA himself, so he didn't have that sort of pedigree that I think a lot of the players really respected. I think that the younger players might have looked at it differently, but you're not going to come to a Kevin Love who's been in the league for 10, 11 years and be like, hey, why don't you run this little triangle offense that I got going on?
You know what, though? I would love for Kevin to be humble enough to go.
I would love that as well. I would love that as well, but some people just aren't like that.
Obviously.
It's unfortunate, but it's kind of where some of these players are right now.
Yeah.
Kevin Love especially.
Yeah, and, JB Bickerstaff, you noticed an immediate change in the team, but you always do that typically when there's a coaching change. Guys get reinvigorated. They go out. They play really well. Well, if the Cavs lost 4 in a row, if I'm not mistaken.
Three in a row right now.
I'm
so they're what, 3?
Because they played tonight.
I think they're 3. Right. Yeah.
Actually, I think it is 4 because I think they started out 3-1 after the All-Star break, and everybody's kind of really getting back into it. Now they're 3-5. They've lost 4 in a row, but I mean, played better again because they played a lot better competition, and they've played better against those teams. You've seen better effort out there, which for a team that's lower in the NBA, that's kind of what you expect. You're going to get that maximum effort. You just don't have that enough talent. And now with all the injuries, they're definitely limited on who they can go to at the end of games, and guys playing a lot of minutes that don't typically play, like Delly, and not having an impact on the game. So that's where the Cavs are. And to kind of close this conversation out and get into some other stuff, where do you see the future of this Cavs team going, and how long of a process will this be based on what they've done so far?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a few years. I think it's going to take a while. Right now, the Cavaliers are acquiring assets. I even believe like if they have a chance to draft LaMelo and he's there, you take him, even though you got guards everywhere.
Right.
It just doesn't matter. You got to take the best players until you find that guy you could build around. It could be Collin, it could be Kevin Porter Jr. They're a few years away from figuring that out. So it's going to be a while. I'd say if you're a Cavs fan, just enjoy the process. I know that's another dirty word in Cleveland. Just enjoy that, but it's going to be a while. It'll be a while before the Cavs Cavs are back in it.
Yeah, it just takes me back to those days back at the Gund Arena with the blue seats and Dwan Wagner and leading up to that year before LeBron got here, and kind of those types of years where it was just constant and trying to figure out a direction. And I think that's what this Cavs team is still doing with this. But a team that does have direction in this town are the Cleveland Indians. Just the questions surrounding them are their main star, Francisco Lindor. And, of course, Christian Yelich just got that $200 million contract extension with Milwaukee. Looking at Francisco, is there any way that the Indians offer something like that to him, or what will they try to offer him before we really get to the breaking point of having to get to like a trade deadline or off season where you have to trade away another big star and a top 5 player in baseball that plays in your city?
I think they will. I think they will make a best offer. I think they will come to Frankie at some point. Now, I don't know exactly what that number is. It's definitely going to have to at least start where Yelich is at.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if I'm Frankie, I'm not taking that. You know, and honestly, I said it on the Next Level the other day. Like, if the Indians are smart, just offer them $300 million, right? Because it's probably going to get 350 somewhere else.
That's the going rate, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Frankie also understands that if the Indians pay him $300 million, he's probably not going to be able to put anybody around him. So he'll ultimately, I think he's gone. Like, no matter what the Indians do, just because this isn't the market that could sustain paying one player that much money, and everybody knows it.
Would that vilify him in Cleveland then? Like, would it then put like the Dolans on a pedestal and knock Frankie down a couple of pegs if that were to happen?
It's the best things the Dolans could do.
Of course,
I don't know if Frankie would ever be vilified. Some people would.
Sure.
We know some people would
well,
jump
some
out
people
of
got
trees.
real, hateful whenever Tommy left.
Right.
Tommy had the 52 home runs, then went to Philly, and a lot of people hated him until he came back. 7-8 years later, for that one last run.
My aunt is one of them. My grandfather is the big baseball fan and taught on my mom's side, and he taught all of us. And my mom's youngest sister is the one that really kind of took on the baseball fandom and the Indians, and we would go to like the 20-game pack tickets to the Sunday games. So as a kid, I got to go to some Sunday games throughout the year, and that's kind of where I learned the game, learned about it, learned about the passion and being a fan of the Indians. And she tells me all the time, every time we see like documentaries on TV about Tommy, still kind of holds some of that resentment to those times.
But I'll say this. They know how to get rid of a superstar because they usually bring back another one.
That's true.
Just in its infancy. They're great at that, so I trust them. And I understand the economics of it. If the Boston Red Sox were like, nah, man, we can't pay Mookie Betts this much.
Right.
The Boston Red Sox, in a huge media market, crazy TV revenue, money's not an issue with them typically, and they even said, nah, I'm not able to do this. What can the Indians possibly do? And then even you look at what happened in Washington with Harper, they go on to win the World Series afterwards. So I like Frankie a lot. I'd love for him to be here. I've kind of understand the fact now and go, hey, he's gone, and I trust the Indians front office to do the right thing and get some good players back.
Is it the smart thing to do for the Indians to pass up on Frankie, save up? Not to save up that money because we know they're not going to spend $300 million on other players.
Right.
We just know that they're not going to spend that $300 million on the one player. Is that the smart thing for them to do? Is to pass up on Frankie and possibly trade him to get the other assets, or would you want to see Frankie here? And do you think that they can win a World Series within? Let's say he signs the 10-year, $350 million contract. Do you think that they have an opportunity to win the World Series within that 10-year time frame? Because if you look at someone like a Miguel Cabrera's contract, that's the worst possible thing that you could possibly do.
The saddest thing I ever see is Miguel Cabrera playing baseball.
Swinging a baseball bat now hurts him, hurts me.
Yeah, I hate seeing that because he's such a great player, and I don't want to see Frankie get to that point.
Oh, but come on, he had like a great spring training game the other day. It was all over Twitter,
Because then once you get to that point, you can't trade that guy. You're just literally stuck with him, and
they still owe him like $120 million, and he can't run to first.
Right.
There's issues. There's some serious issues out there.
And I don't know. I just don't want to see that happening. To Frankie down the line. I would love to see it happen, but if you invest in that, then what assets do you have
right,
to kind of, because you're going to need young players, right? You're going to need young players to put around Frankie. So now you're going to have to draft and develop, and I don't think you have many assets to make trades to put players around them. So yeah, I would trade them, understanding what's going on, and I trust their front office to get back the right guys. They've always done it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've argued in order to keep him, or I've argued for keeping him and kind of against the Dolans and how they've kind of operated this team that way. I trust the front office and see them being creative, because you go back to the 2016 World Series, and there was a lot of guys on that team that were on league minimum, and and you have the leader there, Terry Francona, one of, if not the best managers in baseball, that can get guys in the proper position to have success out there, to have a 1 through 9 type lineup, to be consistent throughout the year, give the team a chance to make it to the playoffs. And of course, we know the deep pitching that this organization does have and how they evaluate that talent. Have we, and I'll throw this to everybody, have we been too hard on the Dolans? Because you mentioned, about the market and understanding why we may not be able to keep Lindor and just kind of resigning yourself to the fact that he's gone. Have we been too hard on the Dolans? Am I being too hard on him? Because I trust the front office to be creative if we did sign him to an extension.
Yeah, I think they are the villains of the Indians, right? Everybody needs a scapegoat or a fall guy, and it's the Dolans. It's the Dolans. When they've been the best ownership in Cleveland the entire time.
Yeah, hands down over the last decade for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, I get it. Hey, spend money, do this, what fans want. I totally understand that, but what more, other than spending more money, right? They treat their players right. They don't, you look at the Browns, a guy's mother of someone's child dies and they cut him
Chris Smith,
a few weeks later.
Right.
Right. Like the Indians would never do anything like that. They're just they're a class organization, and that starts at the top with the ownership. I would love an owner that would just recklessly spend money.
George Steinbrenner, bring him back. Yeah.
Every fan would. But I understand why people are mad, but just people need somebody to be mad at when they get disappointed. When I brought up the point after they, lost in the World Series, and then they the next year early exit in the playoffs, and I brought up, like, hey, are we going to talk about Terry Francona here? And you thought I would have said something about Jesus, Abraham, Muhammad, whoever.
Miss Jenkins.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you would have thought I really went after somebody by just asking the question. And so it's like, no, if anything goes wrong, it's the Dolan's fault.
Of course.
That's it. And I understand it. I get it. But I don't think it's 100% justified.
Right. I mean, you can look at guy like Corey Kluber in those instances. I mean, he pitched 3 times in that World Series, and then kind of going forward those next couple of years that he was in the playoffs in those big games, that kind of those closeout games, wasn't able to get it done either.
Right.
I mean, pitched so well in the regular season, didn't get it done. So there's a lot of fault there, and whether I'm right or wrong about being that way and saying those things, I know it at least gave us some haters towards us, and I know you always say you don't make it until you get some haters. We had some we did get some. I got at least.
You
some
got a little
haters.
bit of hate, the other week.
Got a little hate saying
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's what I told him. I was like, he always says that's where you're starting it.
Yeah. Like if people aren't reacting to you, right? Then you're not doing
That's
it right.
right.
You want reaction, whether it's good or bad. It's reaction. You want people to care, right? I see people talk about Hammer all the time, Aaron Goldhammer, and it's like, no, like Aaron's like the master because you guys are all talking about him nonstop, like you don't stop talking.
And you're
about
coming
him.
back to listen.
Yeah, and if he was not good at his job, you have no idea.
See it on
who
Twitter
he was.
all the time. Everyone's like, "Oh, come on, go back to Denver."
Right? Yeah,
like that's your go-to, but you tune in to 8:50 every single day.
every morning.
The ultimate heel.
Just so you could say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And everybody, like, I'm polite to everybody. Like, I am literally polite to everybody. It's the way my parents raised me, and I still get people like, oh, you're a jerk, you're an idiot. And I'm like, hey, man, thanks for listening.
Thanks for
appreciate it.
And as wrestling fans that you and I are, E, I mean, that's that kind of reaction. It's like you want either a really good reaction or you want a really bad reaction.
Right.
I mean, it's
polarizing.
Yeah.
I
mean,
no reaction, you typically don't have a job.
Yeah, you're in and out. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So, but Paul, it's just kind of your thoughts on the Indians too. I mean, with the Dolans and where this is all kind of headed, because it's been the main conversation this whole offseason. We haven't talked about what this team's actually going to do this year.
Right. I think with like the Dolans themselves, they're always going to have that vilified personality because they don't spend like a Steinbrenner. They don't spend, like the LA Dodgers. They don't go to town like that. But they are one of the smartest organizations in the world. Right. I mean, for the last 20 years since they've owned the team, they've been consistent. They've been great. They brought in the best manager in my mind in the sport. And I mean, they just consistently turn out 90-win years. They're winning. They're a winning ball club over the last 20 years, and that's something that previously. Think about this. Other than the 90s, from 48 to 89. That team was abysmal.
Right.
I believe there was like 1 year where they were picked to win the World Series back in like the 80s, like 85 or 86, and then they ended up being last place. They were terrible for 40, 50 years, and then they got really good in the 90s, and then a little bit of a downtime whenever they took over. But ever since then, they got the scouts right. I mean, their pitching has been phenomenal. They pick people out of nowhere. Jose Ramirez, no one had any idea how good he was going to be.
Right.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a downturn last year, but
they locked him up early.
But they locked him up early. It's the smart thing to do, and they are a very smart franchise. In general, organization. Period. It's just that they're cheap, and everyone's going to go back to that, and everyone's going to hate on them for that. But for me personally, it's one of those things where they need to spend a little bit more money in order to get that. I don't think that you can afford Frankie, so I'm not going to beat them up on that.
Right.
But if there's someone like a Yasiel Puig out there who is still unsigned and is asking for $10 million, I know we just shed Corey Kluber's $17 million contract.
Right.
Why don't you bring in someone like that and compete in the outfield and go from there?
That might not be about money, though.
And very,
I think we automatically assume they're being cheap. Maybe they just I don't want to deal with Yasiel.
And very well could be, but as a fan from the outside in, you're like, well, why not? And I think that's where a lot of fans get a little confused at, because it's not always about the money. But for me personally, I would love to see them spend a little bit more. Now, I'm not talking $350 million more, but that $10 million player, I think that would be a solid pickup. But that's just me.
Right, and those are the cases that show talent evaluation from this team as well, in terms of looking at the player and the person as a whole. So, like you said, with Yasiel Puig, he's gotten some flack for being that character guy that maybe not be high character in the clubhouse as well. And people have said, well, that wasn't fair to him. But if anybody's going to be able to tell you that, it's the Indians organization and who they're going to want in their clubhouse and who they're not going to want based on those interactions. So, but then the other case, the microcosm of another small example of their talent evaluation, Shane Bieber just announced as a starting opening day pitcher.
Plesac.
Yeah.
2
years ago, Bieber was just kind of coming up and showing what he could be as a young up-and-comer, and now, season and a half later, he's your
All-Star MVP.
All-Star MVP and opening day starter. Yeah. So that is a team that doesn't get a lot of run unless there's something negative going on and people jump on it, but you don't get too many baseball conversations. The team in this city that gets all the conversations for the most part, Cleveland Browns, and we're all fans. I mean, I'm still gonna wear my gear.
That's a nice hoodie too, by the way. I like
solid,
that.
Yeah.
It's from GV Artwork.
Okay.
I love those guys. I mean, I know they caught some flack for that when Freddie was wearing that Pittsburgh Started shirt. They were the ones that created that. But
it's like the worst shirt I've ever seen. I hate
that shirt.
I
have
so
that
much.
shirt. My brother bought it for me for Christmas. I wear it sometimes.
Yeah.
That was a terrible situation. But one thing it definitely did was start the rivalry back with the Steelers. So that's the little bit of good that came out.
Yeah, two brothers that are really good artists, do a lot of good stuff for the community too. And just I've always gone there and gotten product from there. People buy me gifts from there. So that's kind of more of the Cleveland gear that I have than going to like Dick's Sporting Goods or like one of those big retail stores.
As I'm wearing an homage Cleveland Force shirt.
I love
right
that
up his
shirt.
alley, right up
I love that
alley.
shirt because I was always going to Crunch games, Force games as a kid. That was best times of my life as a soccer fan to be able to go to indoor soccer games. But with football, of course, and not knowing where this team is really going now, you had all this hype last year, and now this offseason, it's what's going to happen. Is Kevin Stefanski going to be able to be that leader and not be a friend to these guys? Will Baker take those steps forward? What are you looking for, and what are your kind of like early preseason predictions on the direction that this team is really going to go, what they're going to be?
I've been so beat down by the Browns that I was always the guy. I think they could go 10-6. I think they can make the playoffs. I'm not that guy. No. Not this year. No. We'll see, which is a terrible answer to give. But
Sports talk radio.
Right.
We'll see.
We'll see. Well, maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. I do like Kevin Stefanski. Comes across as a polished guy, and seems like a leader of men and all of this other stuff. I'm intrigued to find out what he can do. What I do like is there aren't, at this moment, and there will be once the draft and free agency happens, but there aren't any of their guys on this roster. They're not tied to anybody.
Right.
So they're going to come in, they'll evaluate everyone, and I don't care if you were a high draft pick or not, they are not tied to you. So that there's some built-in motivation for the guys that are on this team, because it's like, hey, there are no allies right now, for lack of a better term. Andrew Berry, right? I think he's a really, really nice guy. Just really looking at what he did, at being so young and being a general manager or executive vice president of football operations, whatever the title is. I think that's great. He's a smart guy. I just have to see, because I'm done trusting.
Right.
I'm done trusting these guys are going to do this, they're going to do that. Now, they have all the tools that they need to be successful on offense and defense. Maybe you need to upgrade on the line a little bit. I'm not as crazy.
You're not that hell-bent on that, getting that offensive tackle at 10.
I'm not. Not at 10. You know what? Do something in free agency, and if the tackle is the best player at 10, then take him. I don't care, but I'm not going to force a tackle. If there's a playmaker there at safety or at linebacker, I want guys that are going to make plays. Sorry, offensive linemen.
Right.
Sorry, I apologize.
You're not Andrew Thomas over Isaiah Simmons. You're not that guy.
Right? No, not at all. Not at all. I'd be furious if something like
if that was available.
Right. I would be furious. So that I'm intrigued. I'm sure I'll be excited as soon as training camp starts and I walk out there to cover practice. I'm sure
that's the way this town goes.
I say it all the time. It only takes a first down. Right, I
That's
mean,
right.
figuratively, right? It just, all you need is some positive to happen after the draft, right? After the draft, who knows? Or free agency. Then you go oh, man, they signed this guy. Oh, okay. Oh, they made a trade for this guy. Then next thing you know, I probably will be right back in there with everybody else, because I'm a Browns fan, just like everyone else in Cleveland. So I'm waiting to see, and if they do it right, they'll be successful. If they don't, they won't be.
Yeah, this Browns team broke me last year.
Yeah.
The moment we got Odell, you and I were on the radio, you and I were doing this podcast, and I was saying, Super Bowl. Oh, yeah, we can totally go. We got the talent. We got this.
Right.
I believed in Freddie Kitchens. There were so many.
The same way. I was on ESPN radio saying that, right? Right. I was on Sarah Spain, on Spain and Company.
Yep.
They called me as soon as the news broke, and I'm like, oh, man, it's, get ready for Cleveland. It's about to go crazy.
Right.
Wrong.
6-10. Yeah.
Wrong.
I think that this team absolutely broke my heart last year, because we were saying 10-6, 11-5, and now 6-10 happens, and to me they are a 6-10 team until proven otherwise. It's just how it's exactly what they are. I am starting to like Kevin Stefanski. I think that we upgraded from head coaches, because we got bumbling Freddie, to Kevin Stefanski, Harvard bound and very smart, intelligent guy. But that playoff game that he had against the 49ers, I know it's the Niners defense, and they obliterated us.
Look bad for the most
they
part.
obliterated us last year, as a Browns fan. but it's just such a bad feeling, that bad taste in my mouth, that I don't think that we're going to get out until September 9th or whatever.
What did it for me is the John Dorsey thing, because John Dorsey
broke the camel's back,
talent, right? And then for them to go like, okay, we don't want you to be the GM anymore. We want you to be a glorified scout. And I understand him saying no. That wasn't the contract that I signed.
He has in the NFL. No.
So in that, I just was like, I get it. I could watch the team on the field and understand why maybe you moved on from Freddie Kitchens. You know, I love reasonable people, right? If you make a reasonable move, okay, I can live with it whether I agree with it or not. But then you basically force John Dorsey out, and after that, I was like, you just don't know what you're doing.
I mean, no idea. It is a cop-out answer to say, like, wait and see, but Paulus and I have talked about it all the time, is now you have to show us. You can't just say it. We can listen to all the press conferences we want. You can say all the right things. You can say all the cliches to get people on your side until you show it on the field and have sustained success. At this point, just like you, I'm not going to just blindly trust because we love the Browns. We have to see it. We're still going to be Browns fans no matter what, because that's what we do.
It's in the blood.
It's in the blood.
They put it in the babies. That's what they do.
That's what they do.
They do something to the babies.
Now, as we wind down here, just to like a little short Q&A here for you, just to kind of close out the podcast. We'd appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, no problem.
I know, Paulus, you got some questions lined up here that we've kind of had either come in or ones we've kind of created here. So if you want to kick it started right there for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sam Amica, Cavs writer for SI.com.
Yes.
I was looking on Twitter yesterday. He was doing the top 5 favorite Cavs players of all time for yourself.
Right.
Because he was doing it for the 50th year of the Cavaliers. I didn't see your answers on there yesterday.
Yeah, so I didn't answer that because I missed it.
I was going to say, I want to know who your top 5 are.
Well, Mark Price.
Of course.
Yeah, Mark Price. Definitely LeBron James. Z.
Okay.
So I need 2 more. Give me wow. Now it's getting tough.
It is, right?
Now it's getting tough. Hot Rod.
Okay.
Got to go with Hot Rod. And then I don't want to go all old school. Give me Lamont Murray.
Okay.
Nice. Give me Lamont Murray. Just because I had to throw that era some love too.
Kevin, I want to hear your answer on this too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, definitely Mark Price, because that was like my first like big time favorite Cavs player, and had like a jersey at the house. Like, I think it was like my first jersey, and somewhere now it's like an XL that was supposed to grow into. I still don't fit into. And LeBron, Brad Daugherty would be one of them. I always kind of like Brevin Knight. A little bit, and then Anderson Varejao was always someone that I really connected with. Anderson or Z, kind of going back and forth between those two big guys there.
Mine, I went Braun. I loved Andre Miller.
Andre
Miller was right up there. Mo Williams. For some reason, I know he wasn't the best player.
Hey, it's your top 5.
Timofey Mozgov. I love that dude.
Nice.
And then JR is hands down one of my favorite players of all time. I fangirl over that guy. He's so much fun to watch out there. It's obviously what happened in Game 1. Obviously tore him down and really, hurt everyone here in Cleveland. But I was still a fan of him. I just think that guy's nothing but fun. So
no, he is.
Yeah,
he's a lot of fun.
The moment that made me love Mozgov was the LeBron on the stage celebrating the 2016 championship, and when he told the story of when David Griffin came up to he saw him. He's like, I'm not going to say what he said, but
what made me love Mozgov is when he did, I believe it was a Hooley House commercial.
Yes, I saw that.
Get that weak stuff out of here. It was the worst commercial I ever seen in my life.
Riding that bear or something.
Yeah, but it was the best commercial at the same time.
It's perfect. Got 2 more here for you. If you could grab a drink with have a drink or dinner with any famous athlete, actor, musician, dead or alive, who would you have it with?
Dave Chappelle.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a layup. If it was more, it would be more difficult if it was just sports, but entertainment would be Dave Chappelle. I mean, first of all, you'd laugh.
Oh,
You
of
know
course,
you
yeah.
would laugh.
Yeah.
And he has such a unique perspective on the way he looks at the world. And I'm a fan of, and I've had this conversation with both of you guys. I love the sharing of perspectives.
Yeah.
That's why I like doing this. And especially when someone has a unique one, I'm fascinated by it. So it would be Dave Chappelle, no doubt.
Who's yours, Paulus?
Chris Farley.
Yeah.
I would go to town with Chris Farley. That would be the craziest night ever. Anything would go. At that point in time, anything would go. So Chris Farley for me.
I mean, I guess I've narrowed it in my mind to 3. It'd be Kevin Hart, LeBron, or Steve Carell, my favorite show, The Office.
Okay.
Like to kind of just have those behind the scenes kind
Would
of
Steve
conversations.
Carell have to play Michael Scott?
I mean, there had to be some moments
Yeah,
in
right.
there.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll do the scarn together. You know, get down on the dance floor with the scarn.
There you go. And last question here for us, actually from Always Positive Jay, wants to know, when are you going to join us for the pickup basketball games that we do at the Strongsville Rec Center?
So when are they?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Sundays, 10 a.m. We basically go, I mean, because you joined us last week as well, it was, 2 weeks ago, the inaugural one that we did. Mike Rizzo was
this
out
guy
there.
a little bit with my game.
Right,
He
okay.
did, pulling up from deep, half court basically.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, no, Strongsville Rec Center, 10 a.m. We went until noon
Yeah.
last week.
I'll definitely have to
Sure.
get out
Yeah.
there and join you guys. Sunday is the day I have off.
Yeah,
I was gonna
right,
say,
right. That's like the day
Sundays.
just wanna,
I
kick
think
back.
Sundays are going to be the days that we're going to be doing it. I don't know if it's an every Sunday thing. I mean,
Right.
we did it 2 weeks
Right,
ago.
right.
Doing it tomorrow. Everyone has to rest and recuperate, and so give that about another month.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to tape
Yeah.
up my knee, I got
Right.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely. I'll get out there at some point for sure. My Sundays consist of me I usually take my wife out to lunch or
Sure.
something, hang out with my boys,
Yeah.
play some video games, and then I'm just trying to be as lazy as I can possibly be. But I will definitely.
Well,
it
you're a
sounds
working
like a
man.
good time.
6 out of the days, 6-7 days
It's
a
been
week.
months.
It's
It's been months.
Absolutely.
It's been months. It was funny when I got offered the Saturday show. Evan Cohen, who is our director of content for Good Karma Brands, he said, "Now this is like a real, you're gonna have to be dedicated to this
Yeah.
because there's now, there won't be like your weekends off." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine," and it is fine.
Yeah.
It really is, but Monday comes real fast, when you're working 6 days a week. So
Yeah.
a lot of I try. That's when I get my Call of Duty stuff.
That's
in,
right, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
on Sundays. That's when I rank up.
Just kicking it on the couch, playing some video games.
That's right.
Just
Right.
relaxing, right? Just taking those days off. Well, that is going to wrap it up for us. But we really appreciate
Absolutely. Thank you.
being willing
Thanks
to
for
come on
having
and
me.
be our first guest of kind of this new era for the Voice of the Land podcast here. Of course, we mentioned that you are a friend of ours, but also a mentor. And
For sure,
you
yeah.
talked about how you heard those OMS, but OCB commercials in the past, and I heard yours, and every time I take interviews and opportunities, try to get opportunities in the industry, I remember everything that you taught me, so I thank you for everything that you've done for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
I know Paulus
sure.
feels the same way about that, so we
100%,
really
yeah.
appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
So,
and you guys are doing it the right way.
yeah.
That's why I jumped at the chance. I'm like, hey, yeah, I'll be on with you guys. You guys are doing it the right way. Sometimes you get an opportunity. Sometimes you got to make your own. And
Yep.
I'm proud of just seeing you guys doing it. I think
Thank
the
you.
setup
Appreciate
and
that. Thank
everything
you.
is great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
But that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the Voice of the Land podcast. So remember, you guys can reach out to us at VTL_pod on Twitter and Instagram, Voice of the Land on Facebook, at CLE_Paulus on Twitter, at Kevin7 on Twitter. And of course, we thank everyone listening on CuyahogaValleyRadio.com on Saturdays at 4 o'clock. For Nick Paulus, for Peter Tull, for our man, Emmett Golden. Remember, all you sports fans out there, don't let anyone ever tell you it's just a game, and we love you all 3,000. We will see you next week.